welcome friends once again to this NPTEL module on handling survey data on healthcare. We are on the third week and starting with understanding the sampling data, testing the sampling data, how to test the sample data. The first lecture we have kept it is pre-testing of sample. So far in the previous lectures, even in the first two first two modules, I have guided you about healthcare database. I have guided you certain principles of research, basic understanding research problems, okay, and sampling design, understanding sample size, and schedules, questionnaires, etc. Now onwards we will give you certain direction on testing the sample data. So, the first one we have kept it as pre-testing of sample data. My name is Dr. Pratap Mohanty. I am attached with Department of Humanities and Social Sciences as a faculty. I have been delivering these modules over 6 years, though my experience in teaching and research is of 14 years. So, without further background discussion, let us move on and understand the pre-testing of sample. Let me just point it out what we have written here. First one is pre-testing is the administration of the data collection instrument with a small set of respondents from the population for the full scale survey. So, basically as we all know that pre-testing is important because we collect a small set of information from the full scale survey. So, those small scale set of respondents should have been tested, and that will give full proof to our full scale survey. Pre-testing the questionnaire on a small group of people is a standard procedure before it is utilized in its entirety. So, I think I have already told you that pre-testing of questionnaire in the previous week about it through maybe a small pilot, okay, maybe pre-pilot survey that helps in understanding the standard procedures about the survey. The purpose of pre-testing is to identify problems with the data collection instrument and find possible solutions. This pre-testing is going to give us a direction about the problems of the research and some of the instrument about the data collection. This of course give you at the end about the results of your purpose. The aim of the pre-testing is to ensure that the questions are clear and properly formulated. Okay, so that is another important aspect. A pre-test is a critical next step in the research process. Once you have a finished draft of your survey, the pre-test is usually carried in a similar population in an area similar to the study area. So, pre-test is it's a kind of a pilot study, a pre-pilot small pilot study. Which should be carried out on the same set of conditions, same set of population and in the same area. Otherwise, it is not going to give you correct direction for the full survey. The questionnaire could be pre-tested by interviewing few subjects similar to the study population. So, maybe 10% of the total questions, even less than that you can carry it in the pre-testing stage. Okay. And again fewer respondents could be taken from different walks of their life, but should be within your area of your survey or area of your requirement could be tested before the survey starts. There are certain principles of pre-testing. Before saying so, let me make you one announcement here is that you guys may be getting bored in getting this theory, following these theories, these background informations. let me mention you very clearly that from the next week onwards, we all have, even this week onwards, we have practical sessions. Okay, we have use of data, use of data handling techniques, and you will get the assignment questions accordingly, and we will be using the previous week's information, like we will be using NFHS data, we will be using LASI data, we will be using national sample survey data, and in the assignment itself I can ask you about layout file, I can ask you about the readme file, or I may ask you about what is the string data, okay, and then so you get please prepared. It will help you in going through the data correctly or handling the data correctly. Now, let me explain you the principles of pre-testing. Pre-testing should be conducted in a circumstance that is similar as possible to actual data collection, or on population as similar as possible to those that will be sampled. Okay. Careful notes should be taken on the problems encountered, and possible solutions should be well identified. If any question has proved to be unclear or distorted, it should be changed in the final survey questionnaire or schedule. So, this is important. What is the point we are noting here is that if any single point is not flowing correctly, not following correctly from the previous question, or the responses are not so clear. So, in that case you might think of changing your questionnaire or your design of the final sample. The pre-test is sometimes called a pilot study. Okay. It is actually called a pre-pilot study. Okay. Pilot study, or sometimes it is called a pre-pilot study. So, pre-testing is recommended as an essential step in the development of the research projects. It is useful in examining the practicability, reliability and suitability of the method. So, those aspects we are going to discuss in our successive slides. Pre-test of the sample should assess the validity of the data collection instruments and procedure as well as the sampling procedure. These should also identify scientific as well as logical problems and constraints. What are the objectives of the pre-test or pilot study? As per one of the literature we have cited, we have taken the information from the study published in 2002. This suggests that the objective of the test is to understand the adequacy of the research instruments, or to test the adequacy, to assess the feasibility of the full scale survey, whether the survey you are targeting with its full survey, that must be feasible. If it is not feasible, like you wanted to study in Andaman Nicobar, but actually the tribes in Andaman Nicobar or the village area or the localities are not cooperating with you. Okay. Like in NSS survey, in some rounds you will find that Andaman Nicobar and its approach is different. They have either not included, or that approach is different, the way they have followed in all other parts of the country for the survey. So, it was not feasible the way they have followed. So, they designed the survey accordingly. So, feasibility is one of the essential requirement, essential aspects of pilot or pre-testing of sample. So, assess whether research protocol is realistic and workable. If your protocol is actually workable or not. If it is not realistic, it is in fantasy, then probably it is better not to go for study. Then also it requires logistic arrangements. If logistic arrangement is well possible, then pre-testing is also going to be successful. So, then the objective of this is to collect preliminary data, not the full fledged data, the very basic information it is going to give. Okay. And let me also give you in this context about our LASI data, those who wanted to connect to their reality. As per the Lassi longitudinal aging survey of India, the latest round, the wave 1 was published and I have already explained to you. That is a full fledged survey data, it is full fledged one, 2017 to 18 full fledged data. But in somewhere you might be confused that they conducted the pilot study in 2010. Okay. And some of the important questions were also asked. Since it is wave 1, I told you already, it is a longitudinal data. L stands for longitudinal data. It's in panel form. So the pilot information might give some responses which could be compared with the wave 1. Okay. So the pilot information like Mr. X was studied. Mr. X was studied in wave 1. The same Mr. X might have been studied in pilot survey study in 2010. So you might compare these two rounds. Pilot may consider is your wave 1, but actually you have to mark this disclaimer very clearly that to all the information that have been considered in pilot may not be comparable. Okay. But just for your idea, just for your understanding whether over this 7 or 8 years period there have been some changes or not, you might compare this pilot study as well. In the report of Lassi, it has clearly mentioned that it is possible to compare, but subject to you have to map those persons very carefully. Okay. And that too it is comparable to a limited extent, to a limited variables, not all. Okay. So, one example I have cited for your reference, some others we will discuss in between. Now, this ensures whether sampling frame and techniques are effective. Okay. The objective is to ensure whether sampling frame, the frame and the techniques mentioned is going to be effective. To determine the sample size is also, this helps in determining a better sample size. Like when you know that more or less similar information is derived from the pilot survey, the population where you are targeting, the study where you are targeting is largely homogeneous. Okay. When your set of responses are more or less homogeneous, better not to go for large sampling. You could restrict your sample to a limited size or to a less size. Okay. The pre-pilot study helps you to understand the framework, as well as helps to go for a technique for the survey or to identify the sample size. The techniques like whether you should adopt the direct interview, or any information could be taken through online survey, or through telephonic survey, or through snowball approach, or through crowd sampling, or through CAPI method as adopted by World Bank. You can go and check by World Bank. I think I already guided you, but anyway you can also follow of World Bank. All right. So, this is adopted nowadays in most of the framework in NFHS 5, Lassi database as well. Okay. So, this is going to be useful. Now, next one is understanding fundamental issues in pre-testing. Some of the fundamental issues as suggested by Hunt et al. In 1992 paper. This pertains to pre-testing is what specific items to be pre-tested. Okay, the first question needs to be identified. Second one is what method should be used for pre-testing, who should do the pre-testing, and how large a sample is needed for the pre-test. That is also essential, and we are going to guide you in all those directions. Okay. Like items should be pre-tested. First question was that only what specific items to be pre-tested. So, we are going to mention it here. Item about the questionnaire itself include length, layout, the format of the questionnaire and the number of lines to leave for replying and sequencing of the questions in the pre-testing. Okay. Second one is on items about specific questions, such as the interviewer should monitor the respondent very carefully while questionnaire is being filled. If a particular respondent is hesitant enough to answer a question, it is likely that the question is vague or complex, and the question contains terminology that is unknown to the respondent. So, those kind of information would be corrected. In the question there might be terminology that might be vague, may not be understood correctly. So, though at the time of filling the questionnaire or developing a schedule, the researcher might be confused or might not have thought of that aspect, but your pre-testing is going to clear all those aspects carefully. Then second is items, regarding the item, what specific items to be pre-tested. Pre-testing of coding and tabulating techniques should be done with dummy tables to make the process easier. So, dummy tables should be developed, maybe prototype tables, small version tables that will help you to coding and tabulating the information you are collecting from the pre-testing. The responses of open questions on the preliminary questionnaire might be employed to propose fresh hypotheses for research that can be evaluated. Like, though in the full scale survey you need not have all open questions, but in the pre-pilot sample study or pre-pilot testing stage, you can frame some of the few open-ended questions. So, those few questions will broaden the scope for the researcher to identify certain new challenging area. Those could be included in the final schedule. Okay. So, that is also equally important. Then to sum up regarding specific items to be pre-tested, the pre-testing of the questionnaire should take the whole study endeavor as a dry run. The final concern is if the instrument will offer adequate quality and quantity of the data to meet the research project's objectives. So, that is important. So, whether this is actually finally dealing with the objectives or not, that final concern is always important. That has to be carefully dealt. Through those instruments, through those objectives are actually fulfilled by qualitatively and quantitatively. So, the methods to administer pre-testing as per the second requirement. What methods? As per the expert literature suggests that the focus group provide the opportunity to observe a large amount of interaction in a limited period of time. Such groups may gather information about a topic before questionnaire construction begins. Right, for example, to learn how people structure their thoughts about a topic, their understanding of general concept or specific terminology, or their opinion about the difficulty or sensitivity of the topic. So, those aspects should be taken into consideration. Regarding the methods in the pre-testing stage, one is on individual interview, another is through focus group discussion. In the individual interview, especially are of one-to-one, interviews are of one-to-one interaction, in which discussion takes place in a private confidential environment between the interviewer and the participant. Then second one is your FGDs, where I have already discussed in the previous lecture this is of FGD is consisting of small group around 8 to 10 people. That time I have suggested 6 to 10 people. Now you can correct this might be 8 or 10, it should be within 10, around 10, where the materials and messages are discussed in a group setting. Then another method for the free testing stage is readability assessment and an expert view. In the readability assessment, this helps to determine a written document's level of readability about its difficulty level, it is done before testing with the target audience during the material development process. Expert review involves asking experts to review the draft materials and give comments and suggestions for improvement. Okay, so those are also important. So, in the methods it is also important to note that satisfactory results can be achieved in both individual and interviews and group discussions. It considers the following questions in order to select the most appropriate method, like do I have the time and the personnel to conduct 10 to 20 individual interview? Can I organize people to meet the focus group discussion 2 to 4 FGDs with 6 to 10 people or 8 to 10 people each. So, these two questions should be clearly understood from the pre-testing round. Which method should be most comfortable for the respondent, which method would be adopted, that would be most comfortable. Some people may not like discussing sensitive issues such as sex, HIV in a group. Others may feel too shy to talk in a one-to-one situation. Then are skilled focus group discussion facilitators and note takers available. Moderators are also well defined, well arranged before the time. Those are also required. Then who should do the pre-testing? First one is selection of the interviewers. Who is going to interview? It is recommended by the work of Boyd and Westphal, Stas in 1977, that the interviewers carrying out the task must be competent to do it, as he or she must be able to perceive uneasiness, confusion and resistance among respondents. These are required to be tested from the beginning. Otherwise, at the full scale survey those might be disturbing. Second point is equally important regarding nature of the respondent. Nature of the respondent as suggested by Hall and Hawkins in 1976 for pre-testing. We must use respondents who are similar as possible to the target respondents. Similarly, Jartman and Berger 1975 suggest that the pre-test should pre-test subjects should be typical and representative. That there are two other aspects you should take a note. They should be representative enough. Brown and Beck 1975 recommend that the trial include adverse and favorable as well as typical respondents. The same aspects also mentioned by the previous author. Adverse and favorable aspect should also be captured. Regarding how large the samples should be, okay, it is suggested that some authors simply recommend that the sample be small, okay, as per the 75 paper of Jaltman and Berger. Others give specific sizes, like they suggest that a sample of 12 is satisfactory, and another author suggests that 20, whereas some other authors suggest that sample of 30 is adequate for pre-testing round. Okay. So far in our conclusion it should be 30, it should be around 30, it should be less than 30, it is more than enough for the pre-testing stage. Small sample that are common pre-test of questionnaire may fail to uncover even common problem. A default sample size of 30 participants is actually recommended by another author as well. All right. Here I am giving one structure, one chart about healthcare research, some of the tools which are required in the pre-testing round, like communication tools or intervention such as print, interpersonal, electronic and new media. First stage is to select the pre-test method. Within that the material and compiled findings included in these pre-testing should be identified. There should, based on the pre-testing, there must be some minor altercation if it is needed, or major alterations. If minor altercation, then that should be clearly corrected and produce the final material tool or the design or the survey. Then second one is if it is major, then redesigning is necessary, okay, and accordingly we can finalize our final schedule. And accordingly all those process will help us to evaluate our purpose, evaluate the study very effectively. Okay. So, in the final page we wanted to guide you that pre-testing in case there are certain myths and facts. Myth number one is that pre-testing is too expensive and time consuming, it's a myth. The fact is that this can save the project time and money, okay, and assures the target group to understand the material correctly, and there are some controversial and ineffective materials, those could also be sorted out in the pre-testing stage. Myth number two is that the target group will not be able to give useful feedback on draft materials since the information is new to them. And the fact is that the target group members can tell you whether the materials are understandable, clear and appealing. Third myth, which is essential, is that only written materials needed to be pre-tested. That is a myth. All aspects, the fact is that all aspects of this one like all those materials require pre-testing. Any sort of approach could be taken through verbal discussion, through graphs, through videos, there are photographs. Any approach could be also taken to go for pre-testing. All right. So, these are all guidance for pre-testing. We will guide you further details on sampling data testing in our next lecture. So, with this let me close here, expecting your views and questions in the live sessions. Thank you.